World War I was the first major battle of the 20th century to break out on a global scale. Involved indirectly at first, America soon became a key player in the skirmish, sending more than 1 million soldiers to Europe. While the boys were off to fight, what about those who stayed behind? What did the rest of them do? And how did World War I affect Americans at home? Hello and welcome to History of Life, where we relive history's greatest moments and the eras in between. Today we're going to rediscover the American experience during World War I and how this turning point in the 20th century shaped the rest of history. Before the war, the United States was becoming the economic epicenter in the Western Hemisphere. Thanks to an industrial boom in the mid to late 1800s, America became wealthier than it had ever been in its 100-year history. But just right around the corner, a ticking bomb was waiting to explode, literally and figuratively. And a tidal wave of change was coming to the country soon. Caught in that tidal wave were over 116,000 American casualties on and off the battlefield. The tidal wave also brought forth changes that benefited many lives. So this begs the question, what was life like at the American Homefront during World War I? It had only been 52 years since the American Civil War finally ground to a halt. The United States was doing a fantastic job recovering and recuperating all its losses when it would again be thrown into the throes of warfare. Only this time, the war was bigger, and there would be more enemies. Before we explore the American experience at home while the war was waged in Europe, let's first recollect how we ended up on the battlefront. World War I first broke out on July 28, 1914, after the Archduke of Austria Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo. At first, the United States remained neutral, siding with neither the Allies nor the Central Powers. It even carried on with its trading agreements with several nations on both sides of the conflict. But in 1915, despite neutrality clauses, German U-boats torpedoed a commercial British ship, the Lusitania, which carried more than 120 American passengers off the British Isles. This blatant disregard for America's impartiality to the warring factions caused American President Woodrow Wilson to finally take a side and declare war against Germany and the Central Powers in 1917. When Congress approved President Wilson's declaration to take up arms, the general public gave mixed reactions. Some supported it, but many disagreed, deciding the war was purely a European concern. Eventually, the mood began to change. More people supported the war, even to the extent that many Americans soon felt intense distrust and anger against German Americans. Anything related to German culture was also getting a bad rap, to the point that Dachshunds were being ostracized by American dog owners. This caused the American Kennel Club to swiftly rename them Badger Dogs for the time being. This distrust and anger probably stemmed from the government's pro-war propaganda machinery. The Wilson administration set up the Committee on Public Information to oversee all concentrated efforts drumming up support for the war. The committee utilized everything: photos, posters, slogans, music, and even movie stars. This iconic photo shows a playful Charlie Chaplin standing on the shoulders of Douglas Fairbanks at Wall Street in 1918 as they promote funding efforts via bonds for the war. Led by muckraker journalist George Creel, the Committee on Public Information aimed to tackle three main arenas for pro-war propaganda. Service. When America first entered the war, it had an army reserve of approximately 127,500 officers and soldiers. To mobilize more men to join the army, the committee extensively released posters and slogans that would evoke patriotism in many American men. They were so effective that even women offered themselves up as volunteers on the sidelines. Food. Rationing food and supplies became the norm during this time because there was a directive from above that the soldiers abroad also needed food and supplies while fighting. Beyond rationing and conservation, American families were also encouraged to grow their own food, like in their own victory gardens at home and in the neighborhood. Many women's clubs also turned to knitting socks to be sent off to frontline soldiers. Funding. Fighting in a war is not cheap, especially if it's happening overseas. The Committee on Public Information worked doubly hard to raise funds by selling Liberty bonds and thrift stamps, which helped rake over $17 billion for the war coffers. Apart from movie stars like Charlie Chaplin, scout troops and even librarians helped promote Liberty bonds to the general public. Since men by the millions had enlisted to fight for the Allies, many American households had to adjust to the drastic change in family dynamics. The mother was now the man of the house, not only caring for the children, but also providing for them. So off she went to work, taking on her husband's former job or applying for an entirely new one. It wasn't uncommon in those times to see women don coats and overalls in factories and warehouses. Many women also turned out in huge numbers to volunteer as nurses and switchboard operators. The children also volunteered in their own capacity. The Committee on Public Information provided schools with lesson plans and activities that the teachers could teach their students about patriotism and democracy. Children contributed by helping plant at the Victory Gardens, collecting newspapers to send to troops, and helping their mothers knit socks for the soldiers. When America decided to fight in the war machine industry flourished. The need for raw materials and labor became so much greater that it fueled a continuous drive for efficiency and expertise to manufacture supplies faster and better. Munitions, transport services, and communications were just some of the industries that boomed in terms of output and manpower. Enjoying all this insight about life in the American home front during World War I so far? Is there something we touched on that really shook you? Hang on tight as we're about to share more incredible information about the American experience during the Great War. World War I finally came to a halt when Germany signed an armistice agreement with the Allies. Compared to the key players of the Allies, America lost only about 2% of its freedom fighters. Yet, the war brought negative consequences, like the rise of xenophobia toward foreign-born and mixed-race Americans on American soil. This discrimination against other people forced many immigrants to fully assimilate as Americans, causing them to abandon their own rich cultures. There was severe stifling of free speech, no thanks to the Espionage Act and Sedition Act, which led many Americans to betray their own fellow Americans. Many positive attributes also arose from World War I, such as the elevation of the role of women at home and in the workforce. This dynamic outcome sparked the movement for women's right to vote just a year later. Another post-war impact came from all the rapid industrial changes, giving birth to 8-hour workdays and labor unions. The spirit of volunteerism was also on full display, with organizations such as the Red Cross, YMCA, and Salvation Army giving an added boost. While it was fortunate that America and the Allies triumphed in World War I, we cannot overlook the fact that many of those left behind at the home front lost husbands, fathers, brothers, and friends. Life on the American home front during World War I was extremely challenging at times. Still, America persevered, learning to live with the war's positive and negative after effects. Let's continue to hope that in our world one day, war won't even have to be an option anymore. Thank you for watching History of Life. We hope you liked our insights about World War I. Like this video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos like this. And don't forget to hit that notification bell to know when the next one comes out. See you in the next video.